you know that he has retired. Who has retired? Sam Whitelock from All Rugby. We all thought that he'd already retired at the end of the Rugby World Cup last year, but no, that was just retiring from All Black Rugby. Ian Foster joins us. We spoke about an hour and a half ago, and just simply started by saying, so good to catch up again, and ask him how he is. How are you?
Couldn't be better, Marty. Yourself?
Yeah, very, very well, thank you. I'm going to ask you a question at the end of this about what you're doing and you know, whether or not you're coming back and all of that kind of stuff. But look, the eulogies are coming in. Or eulogies is bad. But look, the tributes are coming in thick and fast for our man Sam Whitelock, who retiring from All Rugby at age 35. And the first thing that strikes me, mate, is you and me know, because we're a little bit older. 35. How can you retire at 35? You're just a baby.
Well, he's a very big baby, if you're going to describe him with those words. But Sam's always been really considerate about how he goes about his decision making, and I know he would have spent a lot of time with his family on this. But you know, like, it's 35 years of age, but gee, he's packed a lot into that in terms of rugby years, hasn't he? And you know, he's put a lot into the New Zealand game, All Blacks, Crusaders. So it's been a massive thing for a tight forward, and I'd say at one point you've got to realise, make a decision, do you want to have your body for the rest of your life?
Yeah, look, 153 tests, 180 super games, you add the NPC and you add everything else into it, the training. I mean, it's an extraordinary toll, isn't it? Ian, you came aboard after the 2011 World Cup, and so Sam had already won that World Cup and he was already established. You know, what made him, in your mind, such a good player? Why was he always a must-have in your team?
Well, I think there's two things. One is, and they're simple things in some ways, but one is he's just so good at his job, and you know, nothing beats the technician who can just execute his role time and time again, and that was always his passion, and it's something he did really, really well. And I think the second thing is he's just had a mental strength about him. You know, he didn't want to. He wanted to give every competition a really good crack, and he wanted to win every competition. So he brought that competitiveness to everything he did. That actually just, you know, it was great for him, but it also helped flow through the team.
Tactically, how astute was he, and how did that change over time from being a young guy in the team alongside Brad Thorne to being the leader that he was?
Oh, it always grows. You know, I think the more experiences you have, the more you got something to go back to and rely on when you're under pressure. So I think he grew and grew in that space. You know, he was always a very intellectual man, and sometimes intellect can actually slow you down in some of your decision making. You know, because you overthink stuff. But over time he became really clear. He knew what the game entailed. He sort of, and you know, I think as a result he got more and more leadership roles, you know, whether if it wasn't captain, it was certainly as a senior player. So he always had an influence in the big decisions. But you know, the areas that I think Sam made the biggest difference in terms of experience was in those moments, particularly when he decided to execute his role and do something slightly different to get it, because the team needed a slightly different outcome. And it's those little moments that he's taken a bit of a risk, but he's backed himself, that I probably remember the most about Sam's leadership.
Well, obviously the turnover against Ireland was extraordinary, wasn't it? I mean, at that moment in his career, at that moment in the game and things. It's such a physically combative game, though, and he's not the kind of guy that you look at and you go, oh my God, he's terrorising opponents because he's so big, he's so mean, he's so strong. But you've got to be incredibly hard and tough to play those positions. So you would have seen that side of him as well.
Oh, no doubt. You know, like he wasn't a big lock when he started, was he? He was tall, but you know, he wasn't the power lock. He was, and so he had to reinvent himself. He worked hard on his body to make sure that he could get through the games. He got bigger and bigger, and then he actually got a little bit smaller to keep up, you know, aerobically the side of the game. So he made adjustments right through his career, and then he worked hard on his technique. You know, like she's a bit tough when you're tall with very long legs that you and I aren't blessed with, Marty, that and you got these little fellas who are running around and really challenging your tackle technique and your clean out height, and you know, when you're tall and lanky and you haven't got quite the same agility, those things become harder and harder. And so, you know, what people don't see is the amount of time that players like Sam put into the technique, the footwork, those little steps to get him in a position that he can make an impact in those areas. And you know, having, you know, I guess been blessed with the opportunity to work alongside him since 2012, you see the attitude that goes into those small things off the park, and you just know how hard people work at aspects of their game, and he's certainly right at the top of the tree with that one.
Ian Foster's with us. We're talking about Sam Whitelock. Was he an easy guy to anoint as captain?
Yes and no. I think he, you know, like in my time, you know, he wasn't captain a lot in the first 8 years I was with the All Blacks. The next 4, you know, we got down a whole lot of circumstances that we went through a range of captains, particularly through that COVID period, and his leadership there was really strong. He helped the team get single-minded. He wasn't captain on a long-term basis, but gee, his influence as a leader was there all the time. And I'd have to say that, you know, during particularly 2020, 2021, when the game was going through massive change in this country with shutdowns and everything, he, behind the scenes, was a big influence and worked a lot with the players and the Players Association to really, and in my belief, he worked a lot in that space for the betterment of the game, not for any self-interest. And so that side of his leadership, which is a little bit unsung, has been massive.
Foz, how important is it to also talk about the locking combinations and playing with Brad Thorne and then obviously with Brodie, and they played well over 60 tests together, and so, you know, the two of them together?
Oh, you can't really, you know, you've got to talk about them together in many ways, and it doesn't diminish either of them, but the sum of both parts was bigger than 1 + 1, wasn't it? And, you know, we saw sort of a Brodie liked to range a lot more, was probably a little bit more comfortable with the ball, had a bit of an edge to him, should we say, about how he played the game physically, and Sam was probably a little bit more of a technician and a strategist and more of a set piece analyst. So there was a great, amazing combination there, and I'm sure it was the same with Thorny. And I'm sure it's the same and it was definitely the same with Scott Barrett. I think you need to include him in that conversation too, because, you know, the time together they had in the Crusaders was, you know, they both formed a great combination. So he worked hard at that, and the good thing is they had very different personalities. They could look at a situation and see it different at times. So it wasn't like it was there were times that they had contrary views with the likes of Brodie and Sam, but gee, massive respect for each other.